Okay, at this time, I'd like to welcome up here to the front table Judge Nick Holowka, uh, who is going to tell us a little bit about himself also to start with. He is at this time the incumbent judge for 24 years. Judge, yes. Okay. And the other candidate running is Attorney Richardson. So let's welcome both of them up here, please.
Good evening. I don't know what we're going to do without Lester Holt here to moderate, but since it's not a debate, we don't have to worry anyway, I guess. Okay. I do have something so you can take notes tonight. I'm going to have some help passing those down the row there so you can take notes. I put on there information so that you can, if you're like me, you come to these things and you think of questions after you leave. You think, well, I should have asked this question, or I was too nervous to ask a question in front of this crowd. So what I've done is given you a notepad there. It's got my email address and cell phone number so that you can contact me directly. I also have left a space so that Judge Holowka can also provide that information to you to be fair, so he can field questions as well. So in terms of just giving you some background on who I am, my name is David Richardson, and I've been an attorney in Lapeer County for 31 years. I originally am from the Jackson County area, and then I moved to Lapeer County after I finished Wayne State University Law School. At that same time that I was attending law school, my wife and I got married, and then we were foolish and had children even while I was in law school and she was in pharmacy school. So just kind of imagine that feat. We are the parents of two daughters, Samantha and Allie. Samantha lives in Mason City, Iowa with her husband and two children. My youngest grandchild's going to turn 1 tomorrow. So my other daughter, Allie, lives in Lapeer with her husband and 3 children. So we have ties to this community. I married into the Heron clan when I married Julie. Sam and Donna Heron have been stalwarts of this county for years, lived here their whole lifetime. We just lost Sam about 2.5 weeks ago. He passed away, and we just had his funeral 2 weeks ago Sunday. So he would have loved to have been here tonight and see this. So just to give you a little bit of background in terms of what I'm involved in, I attend North Branch Wesleyan Church. I'm very involved there. Been on their board for years. I'm the vice chair at this time of the board. I was involved with North Branch Wesleyan Academy when it was a going venture up in North Branch. Very involved in athletics with my daughters, coaching at Lapeer Rec and also North Branch Rec in soccer and softball, and also when they got older in traveling teams. When we decided to move to Lapeer County, we were looking after we got done with school and trying to figure out where we wanted to land. We always thought we were going to land on the west side of the state, over in Grand Rapids or some area. Well, things developed, and we looked at the possibility of coming to Lapeer. And when we did that, we were looking at that possibility, my in-laws happened to mention to a longtime attorney here in Lapeer County and said, my son-in-law is thinking of moving to Lapeer County, and he's an attorney. Well, that attorney quickly said, we don't need any more attorneys in Lapeer County. I think he wanted to keep a bigger share for himself. He said it's going to be really hard for an attorney to make it in Lapeer County. Well, I I did come to Lapeer County despite that, and I would say that I've made it at this point in time, despite that those words of discouragement at the moment. I did practice for 3 to 4 years under established attorneys here in Lapeer County, and then I went out on my own and established my own practice. And when I was a young guy, I was the new guy for a number of years. I think Mike Sharkey finally came into Lapeer County, and then I wasn't the new guy anymore. But for many years, I was the new guy, and I was very thankful to the judges that were on the bench at that point in time, Judge Conley, Judge Dionese, Judge Bagley, Judge Clements, Judge Preisel. They helped me. They helped me build a practice. When you're a new attorney and you're out on your own, you spend a lot of idle time just kind of sitting looking at the walls. It's awful long days because you have no clients. And they helped me by giving me court appointments and helped me build a practice and establish a practice in Lapeer County. So I was very thankful for their investment in me as a young attorney. Right now, I am practicing in Lapeer. Been here 31 years, and I practice primarily family law, criminal law, probate estates. I deal with juvenile matters, neglect, abuse, civil matters. So a wide variety of things that I do, like most practitioners in Lapeer County. I also not only practice in the Lapeer courts, I also travel to other courts throughout the state, but also primarily Tuscola, St. Clair, Genesee County, but other counties on occasion. I also practice in federal courts on some occasions as well. So I am running for this position of circuit court judge. This is a nonpartisan position. It's not Republican, it's not Democrat, it's not Tea Party, Green Party, Socialist Party. Yeah, it is a nonpartisan position. And I will tell you that I am not a politician. I think the last time I ran for any office was probably student council in high school, if I can remember back that long ago. So I'm not a politician. I don't pretend to be one. My opponent has run several campaigns. He's run campaigns as a prosecuting attorney. He's run campaigns as a circuit court judge. And so he is certainly a polished and career politician. I am taking this step of running as a candidate for circuit court judge, and I have done this with great consideration, great deliberation. I have not just jumped into this half-heartedly or without giving it a lot of thought and consideration. And what has been clear to me in practicing in Lapeer County is that our county, and particularly our courts, are right now filled with discord, disunity, and dysfunction. And it is something that has been taking place over several years. It's a situation that needs to be addressed. And at this point in time, I entered into the race. I knew there were problems. I knew there were difficulties. I heard in discussions with court employees kind of some of the trials that they were experiencing, but I have learned a great deal more even since I've been involved in this campaign. I would urge you to look at my Facebook page. I've had a number of endorsements, and a number of those endorsements have come from not only former court employees, but also current court employees, and talking about the culture and the environment that is currently in the Lapeer County court system. And if you have reason to question their assessment, I would indicate that in a conversation that I had with our probate court judge, he talked about the cloud that is over the building, that exists over the building. I have also had conversation with Judge Holowka's court administrator in mid-July, talking openly about what camp I identify with. What camp? Are we in war? What's going on? I don't understand. So those are assessments by those individuals. 2 weeks ago, Commissioner Ian Kemp was at a meeting that Judge Holowka and I were both at. He talked about a morale problem in the building, that there was a morale problem in the county complex. So he spoke openly of that. It would be my objective and goal to restore civility to individuals that come within the court. I can only control the court that I will be presiding over. I can't control the rest of the complex or the other courts, but I would propose that I would treat each person who comes before me with dignity, with respect, civility. That would include colleagues. That would mean among other judges, among attorneys, litigants, the court employees. We've got good employees in the court systems at this point in time, and they need to be treated respectfully. They're trying to do their jobs the best they can at this point in time. We want to make sure that decisions for court appointments and personnel are made on the basis of qualifications and experience, not based on political patronage or cronyism. We want to also make sure that your resume is more important than your pedigree when we are making appointments to court positions. So I think the question that has to be asked is, during this time of the dysfunction, disunity that's been taking place, who's been at the helm? Right now, Judge Holowka, I've heard him speak several times, and he has proudly stated the fact that he's been the circuit court chief judge since 1996, and he has been the chief judge of all of the courts since 2000. And there's a saying, if you remember Harry S. Truman, the buck stops here. And that's what I think needs to apply in this situation. It's interesting, we can kind of look at what's going on right now. We just got done with the Tigers baseball season. They're talking about a disappointing season that they had. Are they talking about trading Miguel Cabrera? No, they're talking about Brad Ausmus as the manager being responsible and having his job on the line. Same thing with Coach Caldwell for the Detroit Lions at this point in time. So there's somebody that's in charge. There's somebody that is responsible for the performance of an organization. I would ask you to do your own due diligence. Don't just take my word for it here tonight. Talk to people that are connected with the courts. Talk to people that practice in those courts. Do your own due diligence. So at this point, in looking at what steps I needed to take, I had a decision. I could simply put my head down, keep my mouth shut, practice for another 12 to 15 years, and call it good, coast off into the sunset. And the problem is that I do have more than a 6-year outlook, more than a 10-year outlook. I've got children that live in this community. I've got grandchildren that live in this community. My perspective is much further out. I'm looking 80 years down the road in terms of what is going to happen here in Lapeer County. So that is of great concern to me, and I believe that I can make a difference, a positive difference for the citizens of Lapeer. I want to dispel one myth that I have heard. Again, Judge Holowka and I have had an opportunity to cross paths at different township meetings, village meetings, and I've heard him present on several occasions that somehow this is a career move for me. Well, let's explore that for just a moment. Thinking about a career move, I'm taking on a long-time incumbent judge. I am doing it as a write-in candidate. This is a judge that I must practice in front of whether I win or lose. It is at a cost of thousands of dollars to me, and I'm giving up my privacy, and I'm putting myself under a microscope during this period of time. So if any of you want me to plan your careers for you, I would be glad to do that. But I just want to dispel this idea that this is a career move. I am doing this because it's the right thing at the right time for the citizens of Lapeer County. And we thank you. We need to make a change. We've seen change that has occurred already in this county. Earlier, just a couple of months ago, in August, we are going to be starting the new year with a new sheriff. We're going to be starting with a new prosecutor. So the change is taking place. This is another key component of the change that needs to take place in Lapeer County. Second thing that I have seen, and part of why I am running as circuit court judge at this point in time, is the state of our technology in Lapeer County. Our technology is woeful at best. In this day and age of cell phones and smartphones and internet access, it is just unfathomable that we are not able to access information regarding court records, court documents online. And again, I need to dispel another myth that's been generated. Judge Holowka has talked several times that I am proposing that we establish some sort of an e-filing system, a standalone system in Lapeer County. That's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm talking about, and I will tell you, e-filing is coming. It's coming probably in 2017. One of my Facebook posts, I noted a memorandum that had just been generated by the State Court Administrator's Office indicating that e-filing is coming in 2017. And I have heard now Judge Holowka say, well, that's what we're waiting for. We're waiting for that to take place, and that's why we haven't made any moves in the modernization of our technology. Well, you look at other counties in similar size and population to Lapeer County, they have information accessible via the internet. I would urge you to look at Van Buren County. Look at their site compared to our site and what's available. The other issue that we need to address is specialty courts. We need drug courts in Lapeer County. Judge Holowka in a recent article cited that 90% of the problems, or the majority of the problems that he sees, are drug related. But we have done nothing in terms of establishing drug courts in Lapeer County. Van Buren County has drug courts. They indicate that they have a 25% recidivism rate for those that participate in their drug court versus a 75% recidivism rate for those that do not go through the regular courts. The cost for traditional treatment or punishment, $30,000 a year. For the drug courts, $2,000 a year. So there's a considerable savings. The other last reason that I feel it compelled to run at this point in time is that I represent somebody who comes from private practice. In the past, we have had judges that come from private practice as well as the public sector. Right now we have just public sector judges. 3 are former prosecutors. God bless prosecutors, we need them. And 1 comes from the friend of the court background. In the past, we've had judges, Judge Preisel, Judge Higgins, Judge Conley, who came from private practice. That brings a unique perspective to the bench, and I believe that it would be beneficial to the county of Lapeer.
Thank you very much. Okay. We're going to hear from Judge Holowka.
Well, good evening. This picture of me was taken quite a few years ago. As you can see, I'm a lot thinner and a lot grayer on top than I was when that particular photo was taken. Let me just say a little bit about myself. I'm married to my lovely wife, Kathleen. We live in Imlay Township. My 94-year-old mother still lives with us, and as she says, I still live with her. I haven't moved out of the house. We have not been fortunate enough to have children, so we have no children. I'm very proud of my years of service giving back to the community. When I first came out of university, I became a teacher. I taught for several years. While I was teaching, I determined to get another degree, a master's degree, and I became a school administrator, which again, then you get on the other side and you see teachers, and if you're the administrator, you're the other side. I was a principal for 4 years, and during that time period, I had a calling to go to law school. I went to law school at night. I got my master's degree at night. When I got my bachelor's degree, I still lived at home because we could not afford to send me away to school. So I lived at home, went to school, and then when I was a teacher and principal, I worked all day, went to law school at night. I was fortunate enough to graduate from law school. I passed the Michigan bar, took the Florida bar, passed it, took the Arizona bar and passed it, because in those days they had no reciprocity. If you wanted to be licensed in those states, you had to take the bar exam. So I did all that. Because again, you never know what the future is going to bring. You might want to retire to Florida and or Arizona and do those things. So I did all those things. I was in private practice for a couple years, and then I was fortunate enough to come to Lapeer County in 1978. Earl Morgan, who recently passed away, if you remember, just a prince of a man, was the prosecuting attorney. He hired me into the office as an assistant prosecutor, and during his tenure, I worked my way up to chief assistant, and then in December of 1981, Earl decided to retire. Didn't want to be the prosecuting attorney anymore, and then the judge's position is filled by the circuit bench. It's an appointment that's done by the circuit bench. At that time, Judge Clements was one of the circuit judges. Judge Bagley was one of the circuit judges. They did a search. They advertised in the State of Michigan Bar Journal. They called up all the law schools. And I was fortunate enough that in February of 1982, they appointed me as the next prosecuting attorney. And I had to run in 1982. 1982 was a very interesting year. That was the year when Clayton Preisel ran against incumbent George Lutz. That's when John Conley ran against incumbent John Spires, and I campaigned with them. I didn't have any opposition, but I still campaigned with them because people didn't know who I was. People couldn't pronounce my last name, so I had to go around and tell people how to say Holowka. You go H-E-L-L-O-K-A, Holowka. So I was fortunate enough, won election in 82, had to run for re-election in 84 for the full 4-year terms, didn't have opposition, and had to run for re-election in 1988. Again, there was no opposition. And again, I talked to some of my assistants, and I said, geez, I must be doing a great job. No one wants to run against me. Their comment was, the job didn't pay enough, Holowka, so don't get a big head. So 1992 comes, and at that time, Judge Norman Bagley decided to retire. And I put my name into the race, along with another private attorney, put his name into the race, and we ran in 1992. I was fortunate enough to have the citizens of Lapeer smile upon me and elect me to be the circuit court judge. And I was also very fortunate when I came on the bench, I was coupled with Judge Martin Clements, who was also a former prosecutor who became a circuit court judge. And he had experience in being both a prosecutor and a circuit court judge, and he mentored me those years when we were on the bench together. And I really appreciate Judge Clements doing those things for me. And clearly, once I became prosecutor, once I was elected judge, I couldn't hear any criminal cases for about a year. So he was nice enough to give me all of his cases, whatever they were, and he took all the criminal cases because there would be a potential conflict of interest. Judge Clements retired in '96, and Judge Higgins ran and got elected, and so on and so forth. Some of you may not know what the circuit judge does. The circuit judge or the circuit court is the highest trial court in any county or funding unit. Our funding unit is Lapeer County. We are self-contained here within Lapeer County. We, the courts, have to rely upon the funding unit. The circuit bench handles all felonies. Felonies are crimes for anything that you can go to prison for more than a year. Doesn't mean you have to, but you can. Those are the armed robberies, the first-degree murders, the child molestations, all of those things that cause people to be afraid. The other kind of case that circuit judges hear are any lawsuits in excess of $25,000. In other words, if you build your house and your roof is leaking and the foundation is cracking and you're suing your contractor for $100,000, you would be in circuit court because you're looking for damages in excess of $25,000. If any of you see all the Sam Bernstein commercials, Mike Morris commercials, all those, a majority of those lawsuits are filed in circuit court. In fact, I have quite a few of those law firms. I've never seen Sam Bernstein live. Never seen Mike Morris live. They always send one of their attorneys, but I've never seen them actually in my courtroom here in Lapeer County. The other kind of lawsuit that you deal with is called domestic relations. In the old days, they used to call them divorces because people used to get married, and then if they couldn't live together, they got divorced, and you separated the children, or you gave custody to somebody or somebody else, and you had to divide property. Well, these days, about 50% of the people, they don't get married. They just live together, but they still have children, they still have property, they still have to be separated in some fashion. So we put a nice word on it. We call it domestic relations. Those are the jurisdictions that the circuit court bench has. Now, as being the circuit court judge, as I said, I worked with Judge Clements for a lot of that time period. And when he left in '96, the Supreme Court appoints the chief judge. It's appointed by 7 members of the Michigan Supreme Court. And you're going to have a chance to vote for 2 of them because they're going to be on the nonpartisan ballot this coming November. David Viviano is running for re-election. He's the Republican nonpartisan nominee, so to speak. The other person is Ms. Larson, who's the other Republican nominee. They're running against 2 nonpartisan Democrats, being a Mr. Szymanski and a Deborah Thomas. They're both attorneys. So I was appointed chief judge in 1996. And again, it's not a popularity contest. It's a difficult situation where you have to deal with tough issues. In the county of Lapeer currently, and again, I can bring you up on some situation, in the circuit court, we have approximately 20 people on staff. And that counts in the juvenile authorities, the probate court, because they merged a lot of that. We got 21 people there. In the front of the court office, which is under the circuit court, we have 18 people. And in district court, where I'm chief judge also, we have 20 people. So that's almost 60 people that I have to deal with, and I have to deal with the funding unit. 2 of those bargaining units are Teamsters. We have to negotiate contracts. We have to have work rules. We have to do all of those things. And again, as my opponent said, there's a lot of stress in the building because the building is being repaired. They are taking out all the windows. They are redoing the girders to hold the windows in place. All the windows have to be changed. The brick has to be replaced. In fact, the air in some of the offices was so bad, we had to call Myosha to do some air samples. And our employees are there working to provide you services. So I applaud the people that work in the county building in regards to the conditions sometimes we provide them in regards to those particular circumstances. I've also been in charge during a very difficult time. The state legislature, in their infinite wisdom and knowledge, in 2012, sunsetted one of the judge positions. prior to that time, since I came to Lapeer in 1978, we always had 5 judges. 2 circuit, 2 district, 1 probate. The Supreme Court made recommendations to the state legislature, and the state legislature adopted those recommendations. And as a result of that, in 2012, that was the last term for Judge Conley, he could not run for re-election, and they did not have that seat open for anybody. So based upon the caseload we had left, it was my job to divide the caseload among the 4 judges that were there and move some staff and do those kinds of things. And those are the kind of decisions that I had to make, and at times those are very, very difficult decisions because, as all of you know, people get into a rhythm, they get into their job, they feel very comfortable. When you start moving people around saying, you got to do this, or you have to do that, or you have to do this, that is the responsibility of the chief judge. And again, I've been reappointed as chief judge by the Michigan Supreme Court. I get paid nothing extra. I carry a full caseload. And I still do that job because I think it's important to provide the services to the citizens of the county of Lapeer. Now, I think one of the things that I do want to mention, and again, I know this may sound a little bit boring, but I think Dave took 20 or 25 minutes, just have a little short thing about this technology because, again, this has somehow appeared. All the courtrooms in the Lapeer County Courthouse, be they district, probate, or circuit, are equipped with Polycom that allows for real-time audio and video conferencing. So in other words, we don't have to transport a lot of bad people from prison for hearings, and sometimes in abuse and neglect cases, in very many proceedings, and that saves on financial transport and transporting these dangerous individuals. We also have, each courtroom has at least 2 computers, allowing for record maintenance and digital recording of all court proceedings. These digital recordings are maintained on a secure server and are continuously archived. In addition, all case records are maintained electronically on a closed network database known as the Judicial Information System. JIS allows full tracking of case progress and financial obligations. Again, every district court, circuit court, probate court employee is provided with a work desk computer on a secured county network. Again, the district court alone has 29 computers. The friend of the court has at least 23. The county hopes to be able to provide secured Wi-Fi access in the courtrooms for all practitioners, pending resolution of the network security and sufficient funding concerns. Again, there's Wi-Fi now for the people that have the right password, but for the public, we're working on that. And one thing that I want to mention over here, that on August 25th, 2016, the State Court Administrator's Office, through the Supreme Court, released what's called a request for proposal in order to secure a vendor to supply uniform e-filing system. The State Court Administrator's Office is hopeful that a vendor will be chosen by early 2017. It's all well and good to say, let's put a system in now that people can access that information from home, and then in 2017, the State Court Administrator's Office comes out with a different program. And all the money we spent to provide this new program may not be compatible with the new system that the State Court Administrator puts in. And again, right now, if you want to look at any file, you come down to the courthouse, you can look at it. Once we get this up and running, you can do it electronically. But clearly, we have to have firewalls and all the other things that are out there for people hacking, going in there, stealing dates of birth. I mean, I've been around so long that when we used to do divorce cases, people would put in their Social Security number, they would put in their children's Social Security number, they would put their credit card numbers, they would put their date of birth in. We can't do that now. It's all illegal. Can you imagine if somebody was able to find your Social Security card number, date of birth? There'd be multiple identities. So again, All these things have to be done properly. Now, currently, Oakland County has a system. They have their own system. Macomb County has a system. They have their own system. They're not compatible. They can't talk to each other. So if an attorney goes to Oakland County, he's got to have one system. If he goes to Macomb County, he has to have another system. The state is going to tell us what they feel is the best system and what will be conducive, not only for practitioners, but for citizens if they want to access their file. Again, I know it's kind of boring to read, but want to make sure that you have that in that particular situation. As I said before, when Judge Conley left, we had to do some case reassignment. We finally got that going to a certain extent because one of the judges had to be upstairs, he had to be downstairs, he had to deal with different staff, have to deal with different caseload situations, code numbers, and things of that nature. Then Judge Higgins decided to retire. Now then we had a new judge appointed. We had to go through that whole process again, and because that new judge, Judge Conchu, was a former prosecutor, he had to recuse himself from all the criminal cases, which caused more stress on the system, caused more people doing jobs that they didn't feel comfortable in. All those things had to take place. And again, I had to make those decisions. So when somebody says the buck stops here, it does. I had to make the tough decisions, and when I made those tough decisions, I was reappointed as the chief judge. Supreme Court was aware of the circumstances here in Lapeer, of what was going on. They still reappointed me because somebody had to make those tough decisions. And again, I have to work within the confines of the funding unit. The funding unit is the county of Lapeer. It's a fancy way of saying it's your tax dollars that are paying most of the business. And the county of Lapeer is very frugal. We're like the 4th or 5th lowest general taxing authority in the state of Michigan. When other counties had unpaid furlough days, we didn't have that. We didn't have any furlough days. People were employed as they were supposed to be employed, and they were paid. None of our checks ever bounced, and I have a good working relationship with the administration, the commissioners, and the county administrator in regards to all those things. We can only work within those particular areas. I think the only thing I want to add at this point is that my opponent doesn't talk about the experience, knowledge, and breadth that I have to do. I have to try capital offense cases. When this Marie Warren was murdered 4 or 5 years ago and they cut her fingers off, eventually law enforcement found the perpetrator. We had to go through a trial, and he was found guilty. Longer than that, 8 years ago, there was a gentleman, I call him gentleman, an individual who killed 3 people at the Pines of Lapeer, as it was once called. Killed a woman and 2 individuals. We had another 2.5, 3-week trial. Just recently, there was a young man that was convicted in the fall of first-degree murder. And many times when I sit as the judge, I always say, the court determines. Not that I have a big ego, but the law says what the sentence has to be. If you're convicted of first-degree murder, the mandatory sentence is life without the possibility of parole. It's not like I can change it. That's the sentence. There was a gentleman in February who was convicted. He was 67 years old, convicted of molesting his granddaughter and a friend of his granddaughter. He was convicted of criminal sexual conduct in the first degree, a capital offense. The mandatory minimum on that sentence was 25 years. So basically he got a life sentence. He's 67 years old. I can't change it. So when I sit there and I say, the court determines that the following sentence is this, this, and this, I have to follow the law. In sentencing people, there are things called offense variables, prior record variables, all of those things. All of those things have to be taken into consideration. The only thing I can promise you that I can be fair and impartial. That's the only thing any judge can promise anybody, that you can be fair and impartial. One last comment I want to make is in regards to specialty courts. we do have a mental health court. We got a grant for a mental health court, and many times when Oakdale Center or Clinton Valley or the facility up in Carroll was closed, many of those individuals who had mental situations were put out in the street, and things don't go well for them. Judge Barnard is in charge of mental health court. We got a grant for that. We have specially trained attorneys who handle that. As far as the drug court is concerned, it's very difficult to get the numbers right and apply for the grant. I've been trying to get a veterans court. We just don't have enough veterans coming through the system to justify a veterans court. Candace Miller, when she was state congresswoman, wanted to know why we don't have a veterans court. In every criminal file, there's an orange sheet of paper. You flick it over. Are you a veteran? Yes or no. A lot of times, we'll get the orange piece of paper, and neither one is signed, so I don't know what they were thinking. But if we had enough numbers to justify a veterans court, we would do one. Other places have business courts. We don't have enough judges for a business court. So again, clearly those are things that you have to get a grant for. I'm the chairman of the Lapeer County Community Corrections. That is a way that we try to have alternative sentences to allow people not to lose their job, not to be in jail constantly, but be able to be reunified with their families, keep their job, and have something alternative instead of just keeping them in jail. I've been chairman of that because it's a combined Tuscola-Lapeer. The judge in Tuscola says, Holowka, no, you be the chairman. You get all the heartache. And this year, the state cut us $50,000. Just out of the clear blue. Now, I don't know if they cut us $50,000 because all the money's going somewhere else, or there's a shortfall. But those are some of the things that I have to deal with. And if somebody comes to me and says, Judge, don't send me to jail, do this, that, the other thing, if the money is not there for those programs, I can't do that. And again, I certainly would like to have the Cadillac of technology in Lapeer County. I think everybody would. But we don't. You walk into our courthouse, it's rather plain, stark. There are no silver pillars, there's no marble, there's nothing. It's just an average courthouse because it reflects the people of Lapeer County. We are hardworking individuals who aren't impressed with marble, gold, or glitter. And I've been there for that many years. Now, one thing Mr. Richardson doesn't mention about his change of career, the day after the primary, he comes into my office and says, Judge, can I talk to you? He says, no problem, come on in. Comes in, doesn't even sit down, stands at my desk and says, Judge, at this stage in my life, I want to change a career. I'm going to run against you as a write-in. Why? Ron Caliquin lost. Tim Turkelson lost. Mr. Hemmingson from the Road Commission lost. They all lost. And Mr. Richardson, if he thought I was doing such a bad job, he should have circulated petitions, got his name on the ballot, and run against me starting back in April and May, and we could have been doing this all summer long. But when he saw an opportunity that those incumbents lost, he's going to get on the bandwagon and run against me. If I'm as bad as he said, which were all personal, nothing about his experience and qualifications, if I'm that bad, should have done it a long time ago. Again, I would hope that you would vote for me. You only see one name on the ballot. It's my name. It's on the nonpartisan ballot. After you vote for Supreme Court justices, please vote for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judge. Okay, we just heard from both of them, and now I'm going to open up for questions. Now, let me remind you, when we ask questions here, specify which candidate you're asking the question to, and then no impertinent questions, okay? Make them relevant to what their bases are and their talks have been, okay? First of all, Greg, sorry, you want to do that? Greg's going to come around with the microphone. Raise your hand if you got a question, and he'll give it to you.
Any questions?
I got a lot of questions. I'm addressing this to Mr. Richardson. we've all had years to know what Judge Holowka, I never can say your name, Holowka has done. We've had a belly full of people that say, we're going to change. We had it with Obamacare. Oh, we'll pass it and we'll find out what it is. I'm not going to vote for somebody that says, I want to change. And if you have any allegations, I would like Mr. Holowka to be able to address any allegations you may have. Do you have any reason to believe that you're going to do a better job, and what? There's disunity in the courts. What do you believe is caused? Does the judge have any control over that, or is that beyond his control? I guess Judge Holowka can maybe address that after you're done. Okay.
In terms of what I am going to do, first of all, I have a reputation of being able to work with people within the court, work with my colleagues. I am somebody that I believe that has that in my background for 31 years in practicing law. I deal with tense situations as well. Judge Holowka talks about trying cases and having those matters tried in front of him. I'm one of the attorneys that practices in front of him and handles those cases, the criminal cases, the civil cases that go before him. I've done that for 31 years. I've built a practice for 31 years. I haven't been a judge. That's not something that I can talk to you about in terms of experience. I will tell you this. Judge Holowka became a judge with 14 years of experience in one area of law, in criminal law. I have 31 years of experience in a variety of practice and areas of law. I have a great deal of experience in the family law matters, which are before the circuit court. I have a great deal of experience in criminal law matters, handled very serious matters in front of Judge Holowka and other judges. So in terms of bringing unity to the court, I think I am somebody that could be a person. Judge Holowka, for the last several years, was hunkered in the bunker. He did not communicate with his secretary, who is one of the people who is endorsing me in this campaign. He would go in and shut his door, essentially, and he used to come out and kibitz with the attorneys from time to time. That's not happened in years. So there's definitely been a change in the attitude and demeanor in the court and in the court system. And yes, I lay a good portion of that with Judge Holowka.
Okay, let me get anybody else, and then we'll let the judge respond.
Mr. Lynch just throws his hands up. You can't do that. Let me say this at this point in time. There certainly is no disunity as far as I'm concerned. I have judges' meetings once a month. All the judges come together. I have a judicial council meeting. All the judges come together. I meet with the administration. I meet with all those individuals, and we plan where we're going to go and what we're going to do. In regards to contact with attorneys, it's all well and good to have contact with attorneys. The situation in my office was the person I was working with sitting directly across from me, because the way the setup was, and she certainly couldn't shut the door not to look at me constantly, and I shut the door so I wouldn't look at her or whatever she was doing constantly. And the person who may have been disgruntled worked with me for 23 and a half years. 23 and a half. In fact, prior to her retiring, because she retired, she had me write 5 letters of recommendation for her and had me sign them. So she got 5 letters of recommendation from me, worked for me for 23.5 years, and she quit on her own. She retired after, I don't know, 40 years working for the county or something. I was the longest judge she ever worked with. But yet somehow I forced her out, and I did this or I did that, which clearly that weren't the circumstances. If she didn't want to quit, she'd still be there today. And again, when that happened, you lose judges. I mean, you lost the secretary. When we lost the judge and we did some of these other things, you had to cut other personnel. I've trimmed the office down as far as size is concerned to try to save money in regards to the things that the county is doing in all these matters. I meet with the judges. If they have a concern, clearly Judge Conchu's voice is heard. If he has a concern, he lets me know, we do it. His concern is they're tearing his windows out and he can't breathe the air. And I said, well, we'll try to resolve that. I meet with Judge Scott. He's got the same problem. They're ripping his office apart. Same thing with Judge Barnard. They're ripping her office apart. I, as chief judge, they haven't gotten as far as I am. They don't think they're going to get that far before the snow flies. But again, we all meet. If there's a situation, we'll handle it. In all the years that I've been on the bench and as an attorney, I've never had anybody file an attorney grievance against me that has been sustained. People complain about attorneys all the time. In all the years I've been a judge, no one's filed a judicial tenure complaint against me that's been sustained. Never. And I'm proud of that record. And no matter what you do, when you're on the bench for 23.5 years, almost 24, as I used to say, my wife says I should stop saying this, you upset 50% of the people 100% of the time when they walk out of that courtroom. When you sentence somebody, it's never enough for the victim. They want the maximum sentence. And it's always too much for the defendant. And usually when they walk out of that courtroom, they're mad at me. That's what tends to happen. Thank you.
Right here, Tim.
Thank you.
I've got a question dealing with the operation of the court. And this to,
Which judge?
Holowka. Got it. Dealing with the operation of the court, can you just give us a quick summary? There's so many judges. You have open cases. You have civil cases, domestic relations matters. You have contract cases. You have tort actions, and you have criminal matters. How many cases are open and pending, and has the state administrator's office come down and somehow given an edict saying you have too many cases pending, and so maybe give us some information on that.
Okay, there are timelines that have been initiated by the state court administrator's office on how long a case should stay open and how quickly it should proceed. What I found here in Lapeer County over the years, that's never a problem. The problem is we go to trial too fast. The problem is attorneys come and they keep asking for adjournments. The problem is attorneys keep coming in and asking for continuances in regards to these matters. I am up to date as far as my caseload is concerned in regards to the criminal cases. I handle all the felonies. If there's a felony that needs to be reassigned because I'm the chief judge, we have to bring in a visiting judge. That's something we try not to do. I have close to 400 open felony files that I handle. I have over 500 civil cases that I handle. I do not handle domestic relations. The way we've divided up the casework since roughly 2000, 2002, the domestic relations are divided between Judge Scott, who's sitting right there, and Judge Conchu, who's sitting in the back. They divided up, or the domestic relations cases have been divided up between them. They handle the domestic relations cases. I do not. The district court, part of the problem is we only have one district judge. Judge Barnard does 80% of the criminal. Judge Conchu does 20% of the criminal. He also does landlord-tenant. He also does lawsuits less than $25,000. Now, one reason why we're able to continue to operate with fewer judges is because we have 2 magistrates. They're both attorneys. So they can hear a lot of the cases, small claims and other matters that normally would go to the district judge. We also have a friend of the court referee who has to be an attorney. And that gentleman hears a lot of the cases. So again, there is other support staff within the system to keep the system moving and keep it operating. And again, my stats, I'll hold them up against anybody. We're up to date. We're moving ahead. Thank you.
Over here, Tim.
My name's Sam Oyster. I was born in Lapeer County in 1955. I'm a veteran of foreign wars. I suffer from PTSD. I'm an alcoholic. Oh, Mr. Kansas. I know Mr. Holowka. I know the sheriff. Stance, H. County, half. What can to increase policies for men like me?
One of the things that I would want to do is look at best practices of other counties. And again, I would urge people to look at Van Buren County, a county which is smaller than us and a county which has a lower per capita income. And they have a number of specialty courts. And one of the things that they have accessible, there's a regional veterans court in that area. And I don't know what would prohibit us from looking at that here. Judge Holowka's talked about talking with Candace Miller about the possibility of some sort of a veterans program. But they have a regional veterans court there. They also have a drug court. They have a sobriety court that they're implementing. They have a recovery court, which is dealing with mental health issues. So they have a number of specialty courts that would help people with substance problems, with veterans issues. In terms of funding, I talked to the specialty court administrator. They got a specialty court administrator. I said, what does all of this cost the county of Van Buren? She says nothing, because they get state and federal grants for all of those specialty courts. So I would say one of the things I would want to do as a judge, I'd want to go spend some time in Van Buren County and see how they do it and talk to their judges. Their judges work together. They work as a cooperative team, and they have a mission statement and a vision statement that they're unified about. And that's something that we need to look at here in Lapeer County. So all the courts are working together, hand in hand, and they bring the stakeholders in. They bring the people that provide the services, that provide the treatment, the veterans, the different groups they bring to these meetings. They meet 4 different times per month, and they get input from practicing attorneys as well, prosecuting attorneys. So it's something that we need to look at in terms of providing services to individuals, and thank you for your service to the country as well. Thank you.
One more back here, Tim.
Good evening. My wife told me to be quiet, but I couldn't make that promise. I have a question for both candidates. It starts with the letter M. We've come to a point in where the landscape of things has really changed in the practice of law. And what I'm referring to is one word, the MIDC, the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission. Things are going to change a bit for a circuit judge, other judges, as we have a prosecutor's office that has a budget. We have defense attorneys that are trying to represent rights for defendants, not what they're actually accused of. So I'm just curious as to how circuit court bench and candidate Richardson are going to handle both of those.
Do you care which one answers first?
Doesn't matter to me.
Well, if you're talking about indigent defense in Lapeer County, I think our defendants are fairly well represented in Lapeer County. I will tell you this, the amount that is paid to court-appointed attorneys in Lapeer has not changed in 31 years since I've been in practice. I think there was one minor change in the fee schedule. But I know that the state is looking at different ways of providing indigent defense. I know some counties use they have a defense attorney's office that is presented and contracts with the county to present defense for indigent individuals. But it is something that needs to be reviewed. I think there have been several proposals made in the past for the way that we fund indigent defense in Lapeer County, and so far there's been no action taken on that at all. So I believe that it's something that needs to be evaluated in the future very soon.
The state legislature passed legislation try to uniform the providing of indigent counsel throughout the state of Michigan. The state legislature, under Governor Snyder, created an Indigent Defender Commission. They were all governor appointees. We have a Mr. Sachs, who used to be the head of the public defender in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And they are coming out with guidelines, and I know he hates to hear this word, but guidelines on what counties must provide. And those guidelines indicate, first of all, the first thing is that at every arraignment, there has to be a defense lawyer present. At every arraignment. That doesn't, so in other words, you would almost have to have somebody who has a public defender office within the county of Lapeer to be at every arraignment when that person is there. On top of that, they're going to have continuing legal education. What that means is attorneys are going to be graded. Either they can do capital offense cases, they can do felony cases, or they can do misdemeanor cases, or they can do this or that. And you have to get continuing legal education to qualify for those particular situations. The big issue is funding at the county administrator here, and the big issue is funding in regards to these matters. Just to let you know, in 2015, the county of Lapeer approached $500,000 for indigent defense. In 2016, we're on the same track. We're in the middle of budgets. For next year, we're planning the same. What the state is telling us, that whatever plan we put in place has to be approved by the state, and then we have to pay our. So in other words, we spent $500,000 a year for the last 3 years, and all of a sudden we put this new program in place, and it's going to cost us $600,000. The state is going to give us a grant to get us on the line. And as I go to most of the construction meetings and everyone else, everyone says, the state is infamous for not carrying out what it said. The state at one point was going to pay local jails for holding felons and never paid. I'm sorry. So again, oh, it's on? I guess I yell louder than I'm talking into the mic. So I agree, indigent defense is going to be a culture shock for us. I've been in charge of, as chief judge, and as Mr. Richardson has somewhat said, he hasn't got a pay raise in a long time. Nor has any of the defense lawyers. But we have so many defense lawyers who want to be on that list, they only come up twice a year. And I've tried to limit the people that are representing us here in Lapeer. Either you have to be either have an office in Lapeer, or you're born and raised in Lapeer. Because I get people calling me up from Genesee County all over the place. They want to get on the indigent attorney list. I try to cut that back because I know these people. I know the job they do. And I don't want somebody who's spending time in another county and only comes to Lapeer County as an afterthought. So indigent defense is going to take take a big chunk out of here, but the state legislature has passed the legislation, and we're going to have to go that route, especially to have somebody there at every arraignment. That means somebody's going to have to be Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, because we have arraignments all the time. When people show up, and the person has to stand up and say whatever he's going to say so the defendant's rights are protected. And again, in regards to the Veterans Court, I just want to mention, we've worked with St. Clair County to have a Veterans Court. The problem is St. Clair County, the county seat is in St. Clair. It's like 45 miles from here. We try to send people over there. It's very, very difficult as far as their transportation, their substance abuse, some of the other issues that they have to deal with. We want to start one here. That's why we're continuing to take this survey, because I want to have one here. We should honor the people that fought and put their lives on the line to keep us free. But at this point in time, it's there, we're here. And you say, well, why don't you hook up with Genesee County or Flint? Some of the people that I sent to drug rehab, they don't even want to go to the halfway houses in Flint because it's Flint. I don't want to sound that way, but they tell me, Judge, you sent me to, I don't want to mention the name, there's more drugs inside there that I could ever find in the streets in Lapeer County. It sounds good, but sometimes it just doesn't happen. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Thanks, Judge. Randy, got a question?
Hang on.
This question would be to Mr. Richardson. When you started, you said there's discourse, disunity, and dysfunction in the courthouse, and I would add those are pretty strong words, but without any specifics, they're just words. And in essence, you're asking us to vote on this. So could you be specific of what you're talking about?
Well, I would first of all point to, again, my Facebook page has a number of endorsements, a number of individuals that have indicated the problems in the court. I think I've mentioned one specifically in terms of Judge Holowka, even dealing with his own secretary for 24 years, where they were, I guess, hardly on speaking terms at that point in time. And that's not just her situation. There are other situations within the court. I'm not going to disclose those. Those individuals have to disclose that information. But certainly on my Facebook page, a number of people in their endorsements have talked about the culture. I've had a number of people even express during my campaign that they would like to endorse me but are fearful for repercussions in their jobs in the courthouse. That's a very ominous atmosphere. So again, I'm not going to disclose information that the other people I think have already disclosed, first of all, in their endorsements of me. And again, I encourage people to talk to people within the court system, get their information firsthand.
Okay, I guess we got one more question. Are you going to give him a rebuttal, or?
The lady back here. Oh, okay. And maybe we'll have two.
This question's for Dave. Dave, I'd like to ask you, why is your name not on the ballot?
Well, it is not on the ballot. It's not anything nefarious or anything planned. I did look at the possibility of filing at the deadline. In February, my father had suffered a stroke. And so in the time of the filing deadline, I was looking at the possibility of whether he was going to be able to come home at that point in time. We were looking at placement options for him. I could not see under those circumstances or those family circumstances that I would be able to run and conduct a campaign at that point in time. So as time elapsed, my father's health got better. I did not see the same improvement in the court system, and therefore I felt that I was compelled to run. I didn't wait till to see what the results of the Caliquin results were or not. That was irrelevant to me. I went into the judge. I think I did the honorable thing. I went into the judge and told him specifically that I was running against him. I didn't say it was a career move or I was making some sort of play in my career at that point in time. That's not accurate. I went in and told him that morning specifically what I was doing. He certainly didn't offer me a seat to sit down at that point in time. He made the comment interesting, and that was it. So I didn't feel like we were engaging any prolonged conversation at that point in time, and so that's how that took place. And the write-in process is also very easy to do. Under the name of Judge Holowka, you just have to write in Dave Richardson and fill in the arrow next to it. And you don't have to be fearful of spoiling your ballot. If you made a mistake, you can ask for a replacement ballot, and they will allow you to do that. If you did mess up and turned it in, all you're doing is spoiling that portion of your ballot. You're not spoiling the ballot for your presidential race or anything else. So it's a very simple process to follow through with.
This will be the last question then.
Thank you. All right, one more question quick. I'm sorry. I got other things.
This is for Judge Holowka. I follow Dave's Facebook page, and I was wondering, can you explain why, in your opinion, many former and current court employees have chosen to endorse Dave, including judges and your secretary?
Well, as I said before, the employees who are endorsing are friend of the court employees or current friend of the court employees. And again, there was a lot of not happiness with the current friend of the court because he expects people to do what they're supposed to do, and that's why they get paid. So those are friend of the court employees, as I'm saying. In regards to my secretary, as I said before, she stayed with me 23.5 years. She would still be there. No one forced her out. I would answer the phone for her. I made copies for her. Most people call up the courthouse. I answer the phone. They say, "Is this the judge?" I go, "Yeah." This is the few counties in the state of Michigan where I answer the phone. And again, I never forced anybody out. The people, if you look at those names, those are those names. And as far as endorsements are concerned, I have a list of between about 100 judges currently sitting in other counties who would endorse me. But then the answer is going to be, well, they'll endorse anybody because you're one of the group. Judge Conley endorsed him. Judge Preisel, he's going to endorse me. He's indicated he's going to endorse me. So you can put up the endorsements from here down the road. I'm sure there's judges here that are currently on the bench who may endorse Mr. Richardson, and some are going to endorse me. It's not a question of how many endorsements you're going to get, because if I get too many, I'm part of the good old boy network, right? If I don't get any, well, clearly they hate him because he doesn't have any endorsements. So I'm in a no-win situation. And I guess what's troubling, what Dave said, is it just happened to be the day after the primary that he had this epiphany to come to see me. Wasn't on the primary day, wasn't the Monday before the primary, wasn't the week before the primary. He had an epiphany. On that Wednesday, first thing in the morning, "Thank you very much, Your Honor." And I said it was interesting. I never told him not to sit down. He continued to stand because obviously he felt uncomfortable. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Judge. Give them all a big hand. Very good. Let me also ask right now, can you people stay for a little bit afterwards? They will be around to answer questions if you have anything from anybody afterwards, okay? We're very happy to have you both here. Thank you both very much. Nice job. One hand, please. Now, before we go, one more thing we're going to do here is we have a representative from Senator Green's office, and I'd like to have Jim Molesky come up and talk about what Senator Green is doing. So if you're going to leave, then keep it down, please, until we get through here. We're not done yet.
Thank you, Tim. One of the items we've talked about here at our previous meetings has been the repeal of the prevailing wage legislation.
Okay, keep it down, please. We got to hear here.
Thank you for that commanding voice there, Tim. One of the things we talked about at our previous meetings here at the Tea Party is the repeal of the prevailing wage legislation. I'm going to try to intertwine this with a little bit of classwork that I hope all of us learned way back in 11th grade, either Michigan history or American government. This legislation was approved in the state Senate last year. It has been sent over to the House. The members of the House were actually waiting to see how a ballot drive went not too long ago. And as some of you remember, if we get legislation that's approved in one body of the House or not approved by either body of the House by the end of the year, that legislation will die. Right now, there is a sentiment in Lansing that this repeal of the prevailing wage law will probably not be approved by the end of the year. There is a chance, though, with our lame duck session, depending if there is a change in leadership, primarily between Republicans and Democrats, there might be some action lame duck. In this particular topic, though, our governor has said that he does not support repealing the law at a time when he also is trying to drum up interest in skilled trade careers to deal with a looming labor shortage. Quite often the last couple of years, we've had some conservative legislation. It has been approved in either the House or the Senate, but the governor has not approved it. That appears to be the case with this particular topic. Some of you may have heard that Senator Green has been appointed to the Agricultural Advisory Committee for the Donald Trump campaign. I believe there are 25 to 35 people who have been appointed to this Ag Advisory Committee. One name I think you'll recognize, former governor of Texas, Rick Terry. There have been 2 meetings of this committee so far. Mike attended one of them in person. The other, I think, was a conference call. And if I was a comedian and if I was comparing the Trump Ag Advisory Committee to the main opposition, I would tell you that she has already gotten her training with her cattle future sales from many, many years ago. But I'm not a comedian, so I will not try to say that too clearly. Mike is actually at a Right to Life dinner in Bay County tonight, so he sent me to speak on his behalf. I do want to share with you, though, a very clear fact sheet. It's actually from Michigan Right to Life of Michigan. It says where the presidential candidates stand on life. Very, very crystal clear how Mr. Trump and Secretary Clinton feel on various pro-life issues. I don't know if Tim would allow me to do this, but I'll keep a couple of copies after the meeting. Anybody who would like a copy, this is something you can share with other people, and probably with not too many other topics, day and night difference between these two main candidates. Mike was the co-sponsor of a transportation forum yesterday. I think this is the 3rd one that he's done, primarily talking about trucking, roads, railroads, water transportation. Some of you may have very good memories. We had believe it or not, a Republican lawmaker back in the administration of Governor Granholm who got approved what we call ballast water regulations. This particular individual was a very strong environmental advocate, if I can use that term lightly. And this was one of probably 10 different topics we talked about yesterday. And I'm just going to read part of a press release that will kind of zero in on this. And this is a quote from Senator Green. He is working with the MABA, Michigan Agribusiness Association, to explore potential water transportation opportunities that could benefit farmers and businesses statewide despite headwinds caused by these burdensome regulations. And this is a direct quote. We need to approach water transportation from a common sense perspective and one that starts with fixing the ballast water regulations that makes Michigan an island surrounded by other states, also Canadian provinces, that have no such restriction on ballast water discharge and shutting us off from significant economic opportunity. This is just one example of a common sense solution to help address the logistic shortfalls faced by farmers statewide, and I appreciate the opportunity to come together with MABA leaders to continue this important discussion. We even heard the example yesterday where some of the ships are supposedly getting ready to dock at a Michigan dock. They go maybe a couple miles into Canadian waters, they discharge their ballast water, then they come back to a Michigan dock. And we are losing so much business because of this regulation. The challenge, though, is we need to find a lawmaker, and maybe this will happen in lame duck, who is willing to bite the bullet and maybe be defined as an anti-environmentalist. So we will keep you posted on that, and hopefully maybe even our friends at the DEQ will help. Do I have time for one last item, Tim? We've had quite a bit of discussion on veterans tonight. Hopefully all of you are aware of the second annual Veterans Summit. It's going to be taking place tomorrow, co-sponsored by Lapeer County Department of Veteran Affairs, Michigan Veterans Trust Fund. Mike has provided some of the educational material at this event. The keynote speaker is going to be Brigadier General Michael Stone, Assistant Adjutant General for Installations, Michigan Army National Guard. It is free of charge, but people do need to register in advance. I think you could probably do that by telephone tonight or early tomorrow. They are going to have 2 workshops, both of them sponsored by the Saginaw VA Medical Center. First one is called VA Healthcare 101. The other one dealing with mental health, including PTSD, suicide prevention, and support groups. They actually have the sign-in at 8:30, and I believe they go through probably 1:30. I don't know the exact number of exhibitors who will be there, but I'm thinking there'll be probably 25 or 30, maybe even more. So if you know of any veterans who are not aware of this, get them over to the Armory. They can check in prior to 9 o'clock, and it should be a very educational day. Back to you, Tim.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Any questions for Jim? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we're going to wrap up here. So I can have Carol do the closing speech. The announcements here, let me just shoot through them. Our next business meeting will be October 27th, and that's at the Lapeer County Sportsman's Club. The next general meeting will be November 1st at Mayfield Township Hall, right here. And at that meeting, we're going to have the people that are running for the school board come up and talk to us about it. Remember, our events are free. Lapeer County Tea Party exists only on your donations, so if you feel like giving a donation, the cans are out here too, so we appreciate that. Carol?
Thanks, Tim. I want to remind people we still have goodies over here that are available for a small donation. We have Trump pins for $2 each, 3 for $5. That book for $5. And if you'd stand with me, please, closing prayer. Father, thank you for the freedom we have to peacefully assemble, freedom to speak, and for every liberty our Constitution provides to us. Please protect us as we leave and help us get to our destination safely. We ask all this in the name above every name, Jesus.